No, it's so interesting. I kind of, I could hear people in the background. Well, I can't actually hear them, but metaphorically, people in the background saying, "But how are these numbers substantiated? Like, what comes behind them?" And I want to get to the iterative hierarchy of sets in due course. But I think the sort of kind of final piece I want to pull in before we dive into um, atheistic Platonism as per se would be to kind of talk about atheism itself and kind of just really finish off grounding that down, and then we can kind of push into the sort of final phase then. So I guess kind of, I really admire Graham Oppy's kind of way of defining atheism, which is essentially just somebody that assents to the statement that there are no gods. It'd be interesting to kind of understand, Eric, kind of from you, how you define atheism, if that's something you're able to do for us, but also kind of um, why you think atheism is actually almost like a culturally Christian thing. You've already mentioned that kind of it's like at the end of sort of Protestantism, you get to atheism as the final stop for that thing. Like that's where it gets to eventually. So kind of could you just really hammer home for us how you define atheism and also kind of where you see it within the culture and why you think it is potentially a Christian thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think just simply from the word, atheism is a denial of theism. So, okay, there's no theistic gods. Um, I certainly don't think that, right? I suspect that Graham Oppy thinks all gods are theistic. I'm not sure if he thinks that anymore. I think he used to, but I certainly don't think that all gods are theistic. Meaning that they're like, disembodied minds or bodiless intelligences or something like that. As far as that goes, I don't think any such things exist. Um, but I think it is a kind of hyper Protestantism. That's not a thesis that's original to me. There were a bunch of anthropologists and sociologists who came up with that idea. They were particularly looking at the way, analyzing a lot of the new atheism and looking at it from a kind of cultural historical perspective, as anthropologists do, taking communities of atheists sort of as a tribe of humans and what their beliefs and behaviors are. And the first thing, of course, to observe right away is that atheists in the Anglophone world are obsessed with belief, and they're obsessed with correct belief. Right? Atheism really is a matter of having correct belief, and that atheism is incredibly opposed, right, in the Anglophone West, right? Because there are other forms of atheism, in Hinduism and other contexts that I'm not talking about. Um, you know, it's very opposed to anything like rituals or symbols or images or music or performance or anything that's not pure words and or not about belief. And so reading what these anthropologists and sociologists were saying, I started to think like, yeah, wow, these guys are right. Like atheism in the West, in the English speaking world, right, it emerges from a kind of Protestant culture, and it's a real extension of Puritanism. It's a real extension of just purifying religious behavior so much, and a lot of Protestantism began with saying Catholicism is idolatrous. Right? Catholics have these saints that they seem to venerate or worship. They have statues. They have these pagan rituals and behaviors. The priest says magic words, and the early Protestants rebelled against the pagan elements in Catholicism. And so we have to purify Christianity of these pagan elements that are still in the Catholic world. Right. Well, and a lot of that was saying this is idolatry, right? Catholics are idolaters, right? Mary is an idol. The saints are idols. These statues that they have in their churches are idols. The Mass is an idolatrous pagan performance. The miters, the hats. This is Mithraism. It's idolatry. Um, they're worship, the relics of saints and things like that. Again, idolatry. And Protestants were like, we just got to get rid of all this idolatry. And atheists just said, yeah, let's just keep going, right? This extreme prohibition against idolatry and an extreme view of, right, perform, let's say religious practice, right, where you purify everything until you finally just say, look, God is an idol. Let's be so. This is and this appears in Christianity, right? People like Thomas Altizer, um, who was a teacher of mine, right? The death of God theology, right? Where you just say, like, eventually you got to purify Christianity even of God, right? Because God just becomes another idol. And so um, it's a continuation of the trajectory that starts with the Protestant rebellion against Catholicism, and it just hypes up on itself until eventually um, all that's left is a kind of purity of words. And that also struck me as very, and I wrote a book on dealt a lot with Dawkins. It's critical of Dawkins too, but dealt a lot with the new atheists. And again, it's like, well, why is it, it's all just negative. I understand, like, people are angry with Christianity, or they're troubled by they used to be Christians, it was traumatic, or Christianity does bad political things, they don't like it. Um, but why not go like into, why not do something else? Why not become uh, a Norse pagan or a Wiccan or New Age? What, like, you don't need God in any of those things. So why don't they do that? So that all, I don't know if that helps, but that's how I think of atheism. I thought of it as an extreme. Again, it's not original to me, right? I had to be persuaded of this, that it's an extreme Protestant sect. And it exists within Protestant culture. And apart from sort of saying, from being a Protestant sect, I'm not sure that it has any future. So, and I don't think it's about, not believing in any gods, right? I think that's a slogan for not participating in a whole sort of range of behaviors, and for having an extraordinarily intense policing of a kind of purity, right? Where what we do to prove a kind of tribal allegiance or tribal membership is we focus extremely intensely on rituals that are carried out simply with words. Um, and it is magic. It's a form of magic. It's a form of magical practice that um, is using words, right, as having certain types of power. Obviously, not the power to say a magic spell and, cure your headache or something. But the way that atheist discourse uses words, it uses words as magical tools, right? I mean, what do we use magic for, right? I have demons in my closet, or demons down in the basement, and I need to get rid of them. Or, in my, my kid is possessed by the devil. And so I use magic incantations and words to get rid of the demons. Fine. This is exactly what atheists do. Well, what are the demons? The demons are all the old superstitions, right, of religion, right? Christianity, Catholicism in particular. Um, these superstitions that haunt our minds, the bad beliefs that harm our cultures, create bad politics and injustice. And some of that you want to say, like, yeah, sure, that's great. Get rid of that stuff, right? But the way we can get rid of that stuff, atheists believe, is through words, right? In fact, despite scientific evidence that says that's not true, right? That people don't respond to words that way. Write another book about how God doesn't exist. And this is literature. That's the other thing with atheists. I was like, why are atheists constantly talking about God? This was baffling to me. It seems to me if you're an atheist, you should never use the word God at all. Right? I mean, I haven't written books about how there are no leprechauns. I just don't talk about them. They don't concern me. And people have pointed this out too, that atheism is a kind of extreme apophatic theology, right? Negative theology, where, negative theology was denying all sorts of things to God because you don't want to say too much about God, or you will make God into an idol. So finally, why don't we just deny existence to God? That's the best way to ensure that God can never be turned into an idol, right? And it's not just the recent atheists who say God doesn't exist. You find all sorts of, Christian mystics who say Meister Eckhart, Jakob Burma, all kinds of, Pseudo Dionysus, right? All sorts of people say like, yeah, God doesn't exist, right? Thomas Altizer, right? Even Paul Tillich. And so atheism is entirely within that Christian vein. And at a certain, I can't read atheist books anymore because all they do is talk about God. And I'm like, not interested. So there's a little take on atheism.
If you enjoyed this clip, then head on over to Locals to access the full conversation right now. Supporters can access the video version, and everyone can access the audio-only version of the conversation. I'll see you over there.